Welcome to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management, a weekly conversation with area leaders about how to persevere during uncertain times. Now here's your host, Gary Shorman.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times. It's great to have you listening along here today because I'm talking to someone who really has gone through some challenging times, and they tell their story in a book, talk about it around the area, and have set really an example on how to survive and how to succeed, even though there's challenges all around. Our guest today is Judge Tommy Webb. Tommy, welcome to our program.
Thank you very much, Gary. Appreciate it.
Well, you have a book out. It's called Running Away and Finding Home, An Abandoned Child's Journey to Hope and Healing. So we'll talk about that in a second.
Okay.
First off, let's go back. You have the judge before your name, Judge
Yes.
Tommy Webb. Tell me
Yes.
about your experience in judge. Are you still a judge or are you retired?
I was on the bench for 28 years, and I was a district magistrate judge in Haskell County, Southwest Kansas, and it was an elected position, and I retired in 2017.
And since retirement, what have you been doing? Maybe writing?
No, well, I wrote the book, but playing a lot of golf, traveling, speaking at different places, enjoying Arizona during the wintertime.
Well, that may be a smart thing to do, and Arizona is a nice warm place in winter. So you're not only a judge, you were a U.S. Marine. You served in the Marine Corps.
Yes.
Let's go back and talk about your story of running away and finding home. Finding home. What's that story about?
It's about a little Korean boy who was raised on the streets of Korea. His mother was an alcoholic and a prostitute. The 7 years that he lived with his mother, he cannot remember her being sober one day. Basically, he survived on the streets. And when he was about 7 or 8 years old, he left his village, walked to Seoul, Korea, which was about 10 miles south of the little village that he was living in, and lived in a train station for 3 days. The police picked him up after 3 days, put him in the orphanage, and he was in the orphanage about 4 months and then was adopted into the United States. And after 4 months in the orphanage, he weighed all of 39 pounds. And the story is about his story on the streets of Korea, being adopted into the United States, and how people have reached out with compassion and caring to make a difference in his life. And the challenge of the book is, if a street child from the streets of Korea can touch the hearts of thousands of people throughout the world, think what you can do with your life if you choose to reach out with a hand of compassion and caring.
You know what? The story just sort of puts a little goosebumps on the back of my neck because I assume that is your story.
It is. It is my story. And I feel very blessed.
And you talk about compassion and people reaching out their hand to help and do that. What was that transition like? Because I know when you were on the streets of Korea, you're there, and as a little boy, that had to be so very scary. But it was also scary to get transferred to a brand new country and look for a brand new home. What did that feel like?
You know, I feel very blessed that I had very wonderful, wonderful parents. Both of them were educators. I remember the first day I spent in my home there in Walika, Oklahoma. My mother and I sat on the couch, and she put a book in my hand, and she started reading to me. And that was my starting of education in the United States. It was a very difficult transition because for 7 or 8 years, I lived on the street, did whatever I wanted to do. All of a sudden, I was in a home and boundaries and structure. And so that was a difficult time. And I say it's a difficult time for me. It was very difficult for my brother and sister My
How
sister
old were
was
you?
10 and
How
my
old were you
brother
at,
was 9.
how old were you at that time?
Well, 7 officially, because when I went to the orphanage, the doctor at the orphanage looked at my teeth and gave me a birth year. And then they gave me a calendar and I picked out a month and a date, and that became my birthday. I got to pick out my own birthday. Now, the reason I say that I believe I'm a year older, because when I was at the orphanage, I never told the doctor that I'd actually gone to school, not for very long, but I'd gone to school. And so therefore that would probably put me a year older than what the doctor had thought. But you know, when I went to the orphanage, I probably weighed 30 pounds.
One of the things that it is hard to imagine in our country, but I know it's there because we see it, but having someone of that age, your age back then, living on the street. What was a day or two in your life of living in the street, trying to find food, trying to find that without an adult around to help?
Food was whatever you could find or steal. One of the questions when I speak is, what date did you pick as your birthday? And I said it was April 28th. And they said, why did you pick out that date? Well, when I was at the orphanage, they gave me a birth year based on my teeth, and then they gave me a calendar. And when I was thumbing through the calendar, I came to the month of April, and there was a picture of a cherry tree in full blossom on that month of April. And when I saw that tree, I remembered climbing into those trees and picking out the blossoms and eating them to feel the hunger pain that I felt in my stomach. And when I saw that tree, I just smiled and pointed at the tree, and that's how April became my birth month.
Well, it's amazing when you hear that, and even with the structure we have now, you probably saw that as a judge. There are some people that really don't have a chance to succeed, but you were given very little chance to succeed during your upbringing. What was the real turning point? Was it the orphanage, or was it the adoption and transition to a real family?
You know, that's a good question. When I speak, I talk about the time in the orphanage and the first time that I met Harry Holt, the founder of the orphanage, and how he had brought us presents. And all the children in the orphanage called him Abuji, which is father in Korean. Meant nothing to me. I never had a father. But then the children said when Abuji comes, he always brings us presents. And I got excited because no one had ever given me a present in my life. And I could not wait until this man came. But I'll go fast forward. I remember sitting at a noon meal, and it was rice soup, because we had rice soup for breakfast, rice soup for lunch, and rice soup for dinner. So it's rice soup. And this man came through those doors, swinging doors in the cafeteria. And he had these 2 big bags underneath his arms, and he dumped out the bags. And I, like the rest of the kids who could walk, forgot about our bowl of rice soup. We ran and dove right in the middle of all those balls, because they said, whatever he brings and you get a hold of, that's yours to keep. I tried to get 2 or 3 balls in my hands, but finally I was able to get hold of 1 ball that no one else was able to take away from me. And I went and sat in front of my bowl of rice soup. You know, in the orphanage, they taught us that before we ate, we always bowed our head and closed our eyes, and a blessing was given for the food. I've thought back all these days why I did not bow my head and close my eyes. Maybe it's because he had given me a present. I don't remember. But I remember I saw something that day that I'd never seen in my life. I saw a grown man cry. I had never seen that before. As Harry Holt prayed that day, he not only prayed for the food, but he also prayed for his children, that God would provide loving mothers and fathers, caring homes, loving parents. And as he prayed that prayer, the tears came streaming down his cheeks. And I sat there, 7 or 8 years of age, watching this man as he wept and as he prayed. And after he finished praying, I said out loud, Abuji, Abuji. I called him Father. For the first time in my life, 7 years of age, I felt within my heart that someone really cared about me. I never had that feeling before. Down by the transition, I believe something within my heart was touched as a child at that point. And then the beauty of parents that loved me so much and gave so much for me to help me to become the person that I am today. But that transition was not easy, neither for my siblings nor for my parents. But they never gave up, and I'm so thankful for that.
Wow, that's a powerful story about compassion and reaching out, and we have that in our community, so many things out here, and sometimes
Yes.
people are just, it's pretty easy to give some money. Sometimes it's pretty easy to just walk by and not participate. But to be able to be compassionate, not because you want a tax donation,
Mhm.
but being compassionate because it comes from the heart. And
Yes,
you saw that in several instances, including your family.
yes,
So let's go a little bit forward in your family life. You said it was hard when you get over here. Our family had a foreign exchange student.
yes,
You know, this was in high school, so we were all theoretically somewhat grown up. But you know, that was hard to do when you have somebody
yes.
new coming into your family. You're coming in at 8, 9 years old, and now you're playing a new role with brother and sister, and here comes somebody new into the mix. A few years forward, how's that all worked out?
You know, it worked out very well in that the foundation of our home, the Webb's home, was their faith. And based on their faith was the love for God, for family, and for others. And that wasn't something that was just taught in the home, but it was something that was reflected not only within the home, but within their workplace as teachers and within our community.
Well, it's story as people are listening along here, you know, the story is there. I was fortunate. I started in a family. I was born into a family, a mom and dad with a deep faith, and for doing that, and to hear a story of somebody that went through what you did. And you know, there's literally thousands, if not millions of others that struggle through the same thing that you did.
Yes.
And for you to get here, become not only serve in the Marines, but then become a judge and now retired and telling that story back. The book has to be something that is phenomenal. So I'm looking forward to getting that. You are going to be speaking. I want to talk about that because you're going
Yes.
to be in Colby talking. What is your talk about, and how, you know, what's that about? Because I'd love to make sure that it is packed when you get out there, packed out there at Colby to listen to this story.
Well, thank you. It's really my story coming from the streets of Korea at the orphanage and being adopted into the Webb family, and what a difference different people have made in my journey. And one of the things I say when I speak in sharing my life story, making a positive difference, I tell them that the person that I am today is because of the choices that I have made. I understand that. But I also understand if it had not been certain people who chose to reach out and with a hand of compassion and caring and help me in my journey of life, reality is I wouldn't even be alive today. So I'm very thankful for the lives of people who have touched me in a positive way. And my challenge to the community is to be that person that makes that positive difference in the lives that they touch.
So you give this talk. I'm not even going to call it a speech. It's a talk. It's a story about your life. How
It
many of
is.
these you do, and where all did you go to do these?
Oh my, Gary, I've spoken to probably 47 states. I've spoken to national and state conferences from Hawaii, Alaska, California, Texas, Maine, I mean, all over the United States, and I'll be speaking in Canada this coming year. And organizations like Carl and Leadership Kansas and organizations that are a very important part of the state of Kansas. And I'm privileged to have spoken to organizations. And actually, I just spoke to Carl, which is Kansas Agricultural Rural Leadership, last week in Manhattan, Kansas. And one of the questions that was asked of me was by a lady, and she said, Judge, all the things that you've gone through in your life, how do you maintain such a positive attitude? And I said, it's very simple. It's my faith. My faith is a foundation. And I struggle for people who go through difficulties in life and they do not have faith. And one of the things that my faith tells me is that I have to forgive. And I have learned that forgiveness is the beginning of healing. And if I want to heal from all the hurts of the past, then I have to let go of those things. Doesn't mean I forget them. They're always there. My mind is a Memorex. But forgiving and letting go, and so that I can have a future, that I'm not dragging the past along and stinking up everything today.
Have you been back to South Korea?
One time I was overseas in the Marine Corps, and they said, Sergeant, where do you want to go for R&R? And I said, Korea. They said, why Korea? And I told them and my story, and they said, we'll get you there. But it took me one day to get there. Then I only had one day there, and then had to fly back the following day. And it was a Saturday I arrived, and the administration, the whole orphanage administration, was closed. But I saw some women working in there, and I was banging on the door. One of the ladies opened the door, said, sir, we're closed. And I explained to her who I was. She said, oh, please come in, come in. And I said, I would like to look at my record, see if I can't go back to the village that I came from, just to look around, see if I recognize anything. And she said, what's your case number? I said, I didn't know I had a case number. But I said, my last name was Park. She said, that's like a Smith or a Jones. She said, it'll probably take us all day to try to find your records. I said, well, do you suggest maybe going to the orphanage? They said, well, they have a new orphanage now, the one that you were at. They've moved away from that, and they've got a new orphanage. And I said, what do you suggest? And they said, well, we have some teenagers in foster homes. And we have foster homes, about 4 or 5 teenagers. And if you would be gracious enough to go and visit those homes, 3 or 4 of them, we think that'd make an impact on those children. And so I did that, and that evening we all got together, and we had dinner together, and then I had to fly back. And that's the last time that I was ever in Korea. I wanted to go back, but time and different things just hasn't worked out.
Well, love that story about going back and talking to those kids, because they maybe see a little bit of light at the end of their personal tunnel, that they can make a change. It takes somebody that wants to do that, somebody that wants that change. Obviously, you've done that. Judge, hang with me a little bit. We're going to take a quick break and come back and talk about where we can get your book, and a little bit more about your speech, your talk out in Colby. But we're going to take a quick break, coming back with Judge Tommy Webb, who has a book out called Running Away and Finding Home. We'll be back after this.
Since 1776, the United States of America continues to stand tall. It's been tested before, many times. Through grit and the ability to move forward, we create better tomorrows. We help our clients live their best lives to and through retirement. We make it easier. Thank you, Kansas. Worth Wealth Management, enhancing lives and strengthening families.
Welcome back to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times. Our program is brought to you by Worth Wealth Management. Our guest today is a dynamic person, speaker, and has a even better story to tell. I don't know how to say it any better than that. Judge Tommy Webb, and he'll be in Colby. Colby, you're bringing out, tell me about your visit in Colby. Because it's on September 10th, I believe.
Yes, we'll be arriving on the 9th of September. Because I'm speaking at Rotary at noon there at Colby. And then I'll be speaking that evening, I believe it's 7 o'clock, at the college.
And I know that the Rotary Club has their meeting space, it's pretty small. Do they have enough space for people to come see you? Because this is one of those stories you'd like to have the whole town of Colby there. I know that's not going to happen, but it'd sure be great to see the whole town of Colby there.
You bet, you bet. We love to have people come.
Hey, you have a book. Where do you go to get your book?
You know, I used to sell this book. This is a little book that I wrote. It's my life story. And about 2 years ago, I decided that I really didn't want to sell the book. But when I go and travel and speak at different places, I make it available for whoever wants the book. If they want to donate whatever for the printing and shipping and all that, they're welcome to do that. But this is my way of saying thank you to the people that invited me to come and to speak.
So you can go online though and find it at Amazon, Barnes and Noble,
Yeah.
right?
You can buy it, but if you go to my website, and I have it's an old website, but it still has my email, which is Judge Tommy Webb at yahoo.com. And if they just email me, give me an address, I'll be more than glad to send them a signed copy.
Well, I'll be going there to do that because I want to see the rest of the story because I know there's more to this story. We kind of had to get some pieces of it and parts of it. But if you don't get a chance to be in Colby on the evening of September the 10th,
Yes.
get the book and do that, or just listen to this again. It's just an inspiration of what we can do if we have the gift of whether it be financial aid or reaching out a hand of compassion, what each of us that can do are listening right now. And just what you're doing, Judge, is being able to give back and being able to talk to those. We can make such a difference in the lives of others. And thank you for doing what you're doing. And thank you for at least sharing a portion of your story with us today. And thank you for going out and doing what you're doing, not only in Colby, but everywhere else.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it. God bless.
Our guest today is Judge Tommy Webb. He has a book, Running Away and Finding Home, An Abandoned Child's Journey to Hope and Healing. It's a powerful story. I hope you check out his book, check out his website, and hopefully see him in Colby live and in person. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to our program. It's brought to you by Worth Wealth Management. I'm Gary Schwarman.
Thanks for joining us for Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management. Join us right here next week for another episode with host Gary Schwarman. Until then, remember to move forward ever, backward never.